Hi, welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. In our series, we take a game, we show you how it's played, and then in the following episodes, we play the game. And where possible, put a seat at the table just for you so you can play along with us and help us make some of the gameplay decisions between the episodes. By doing this, we believe that you'll be able to decide for yourself whether or not the game would be a good fit for you, your family, or your gaming group. Now in this episode, I'm going to be showing you how to play the 2 to 5 player game Kemet, published by Asmodee. In the game, you'll be guiding your tribe across the deserts of ancient Egypt in order to capture powerful temples and battle your opponents. Your tribe will also gain new and unique abilities and recruit powerful creatures to your side to aid them. In the end, only one player can emerge victorious. Now, will it be you? Well, when we come back, why don't you join me at the table and I'll show you how to play. To set up the game, you're going to need to lay out the board, which has 2 different sides. This side is for a 2 or 4 player game, and in a 2 player game, the east bank here is not used. Now this side is for a 3 or 5 player game, and likewise, in a 3 player game, the east bank again is inaccessible. But now let's take a look at the different features of the board. These are the cities, and each player will control one of them. Each city is divided up into 3 spaces known as districts. These are the temples on the board, and you can tell they're temples because, well, they look like temples, but they're also surrounded by a thick yellow line. And so each temple is its own space. This area here kind of looks like a temple, but it's surrounded by a thick blue line to remind you that it is not. This is the sanctuary of all gods. And it's actually unique to this side of the board. Because as you can see, this side of the board for 2 and 4 players doesn't have a sanctuary here, just a single regular temple instead. These white outlined spaces are open desert. And you might have noticed that some of these spaces, along with every temple space and the sanctuary, have these obelisks, but we'll learn more about them later. These are the power tiles, and I like to place them sorted by their colors, red, white, and blue, and then sorted by level. So these are all level 1s, these are 2s, these are 3s, and finally, these are 4s. You can identify the level of a tile by counting up the number of Ankh symbols as shown in the top left-hand corner. So for example, this tile here is a level 3 tile because there's 3 Ankh symbols. Now I'm going to be setting up for a 3-player game, and remember that means we completely ignore this side of the board as it will not be used. Each temple will receive one of these temple victory point tokens. These tokens are circular, and they look like this. The Sanctuary of All Gods has its own unique victory point tokens that you can place here. These tokens are also victory points, but they can just be kept near the board for use later. These are the Divine Intervention cards, and they should be shuffled and placed face down beside the board as well. Now each player can choose a city for their own, and I would suggest you just pick the city closest to you at the table. So I'm going to take this one. Now each player will take a player board, choose a color, and then collect the components that match that color. This will include 12 units, 5 action markers, an Ankh, and a turn order marker. Players will now collect the 6 battle cards in their color, and you'll find the color on the card indicated here on the edges as well as on the flags shown in the pictures. There are 2 extra battle cards with no indicated color, as well as 3 additional silver action markers and a gold one. These are not assigned to any player at this time, so just keep them near the board but off to the side. Now each player collects a Divine Intervention card. You can look at this, but you don't want your opponents to see it. So I'm going to put mine face down here, just like I have done with my battle cards. Now collect up all of the turn order markers. These are the square plastic tokens. I like to just shuffle them in my hand by mixing them up. Then I'm going to draw them randomly one at a time and place them on the 3 turn order spaces here on the board. If we were playing a 5-player game, we would have 5 turn order tokens that we would place in these spaces instead. Each player also collects 3 pyramids, one in each color, and the number at the top of the pyramid indicates its current level. In turn order, each player will now set their pyramid levels and place their pyramids one in each space of their city. At the start of the game, you can choose to set them all to level 1, or set one of them to level 2, one to level 1, and then the other one to level 0, which just means it's removed from the board for now. You will start the game with 10 of your units on the board and 2 of them in reserve off of the board. Each of the models represents a single unit, and a group of units in one space is called a troop. You can never have more than 5 units in a space, so that is the maximum troop size. You can place your 10 units in your city spaces divided as you like, as long as you respect the troop size limit. This area of your player board across the top tracks your current prayer points, which are the currency of the game. You start with 5 of these, so place your Ankh in the 5 position. No matter what happens during the game, you can never possess more than 11 or less than 0. Finally, you place the 7 creatures near the board. Now, I should mention mine have been custom painted, but they come unpainted in the box. And that's how you set up the game. Kemet is played over a series of rounds divided into a night and a day phase, and the object of the game is to have 8 victory points at the end of a day phase. You can also play a longer version of the game that requires the winner to have 10 or more victory points. And there are a variety of different kinds of victory points. You saw them when we were doing the setup. And the reason for this is because there's a variety of different ways to collect them. But let me just show you something very important about the victory point tokens. Victory points that are square-shaped are permanent. This just means that when you collect one of them, you cannot lose it. Victory points that are circles are temporary. They count towards your total victory points as long as you possess them. But just so you know, you can lose them to other players. We start the first round just like every other round in the night phase. And that begins with each player collecting 2 prayer points. And we all started with 5, so I'm going to move my Ankh to the 7 position. Now, in turn order, each player will collect a divine intervention card. There's no limit to how many of these you can have, and we'll talk more about their effects a little bit later. Now, if a player has any power tiles that would resolve during the night phase, these occur now in turn order. We're going to look at those power tiles in more detail later, but let's just take a look at one of them as an example. The power tiles either have a daytime, nighttime, or combat symbol here. So if I had this tile with the nighttime symbol, that means it would activate now during the night phase. And because this is the symbol for prayer points, this power would allow me to collect an additional 2 prayer points right now. The final step of the night phase is to assign the turn order, which we already did for the first round of play by assigning it randomly. But in future night phases, the player with the least number of victory points will get to set the turn order. If there's a tie for least number of victory points, then the player who acted earlier in the previous round will set the turn order. That's the end of the night phase. Now it's time to go on to the day phase, and we'll start by coming to our player board. Using the turn order, the first player will take a single action token and place it on any available empty space located here on their player board. After placing a token, you then resolve the symbol shown there, and we'll go over each one in just a moment. Then the second player will take a single action, and so it will go until all players have taken one action. Then you start over again, and each player takes a second action, placing it on the board, until all actions have been placed. The only conditions are that you must place your action tokens within an empty space. You can't take the same action twice within a single day phase, although some of the actions are represented twice, so you're allowed to take them twice by using 2 separate action tokens. When you're placing your final action token, you must ensure that you have placed at least 1 token within each row of the pyramid. So I would not be able to place the token here. Instead, I would have to place it either here or here. But now we should explain what each of these action spaces do. And as I said, some of them are duplicated on your pyramid. So when placing your action marker either here or here, you just immediately collect 2 prayer points. You would slide your marker up 2 spaces. This action allows you to increase a single pyramid to any level you want as long as you can afford the cost. Each time you go up a level, you pay that level's value in prayer points. For example, if I wanted to raise this level 2 pyramid to level 3, I would pay 3 prayer points. I could stop there, or I could continue and raise it right to level 4 within the same action by paying the additional 4 prayer points. And if you start the game with a level 0 pyramid like I did here for blue, you can pay 1 prayer point to bring it to level 1, adding it to the table. And within the same action that you bring it to the table, you can pay additional prayer points to level that even higher. But just remember, when you take this pyramid action, you can only upgrade the level of 1 pyramid. So I won't be able to do this right now. We're going to explain the various uses of the pyramids when we look at the other actions, but I do want to mention, as soon as you raise a pyramid to level 4, you collect a temporary pyramid victory point. So that means you could get 3 of the 8 points you need just by advancing all of your pyramids to level 4, because each time you will collect an additional temporary victory point. Just remember, these are temporary victory points, which means they can be taken by the other players, which we'll see. These 3 actions allow you to buy a single power tile from one of the matching colored groups. For example, if I placed my action marker here, I would be able to purchase a white power tile. In order to buy a power tile, you must have a pyramid in your city of matching color and with a level at least as high as the tile you want to purchase. At the start of the game, I had a level 2 red pyramid and a level 1 white pyramid. So I could buy any of these level 1 white tiles or any of these level 1 or level 2 red tiles. Once you've chosen a power tile, you then have to be able to pay for it. If I want to buy this power tile, I need to pay its cost, which is shown here, and is also equal to its level. So I would pay 1 prayer point and then collect this power tile and place it face up in front of me. This is not hidden information. People should be able to find out what powers I have, and they can ask if they can't see it easily from where they are. Once collected, a power tile can never be lost. You can never purchase multiple tiles with the same illustration. For example, these 2 tiles, although they are different colors, have the same picture on them, so a single player could not possess both of them. Now let's look at the recruit action. By taking this, you may then spend as many prayer points you want, and for each prayer point spend, you may place one of your units that are not on the board onto the board. So I have 2 units here. I'll spend 2 prayer points, collect these, and be able to place them directly into my city. You may place your newly recruited units in any number of city spaces, but remember, you can never put more than 5 units within a single space. So I would not be able to place these 2 new recruits here because I already had 5 units, but I could put both of them here, or even put 1 there, and then 1 with that troop. During the game, it's possible you may end up being invaded and having enemy troops within your city walls. That does not prevent you from being able to recruit units here, but when you do, an attack will happen and be resolved right away. Now we're going to get to battles in a moment when we talk about that final action option, but first, I think it would be helpful if we talked about divine intervention cards and how they work. Here's an example of 3 cards, and each card will have a symbol right here letting you know when it may be played. For example, this one may be played during your turn in the day phase, this one may be played into a battle where you're involved, and this one may be played during your opponent's turn, but not in a battle. Most divine intervention cards are free to play, but if they have a cost, it will be located here. So to play this card into a combat where I'm involved, I'll have to be able to pay 1 prayer point. You can play any number of divine intervention cards at once as long as you're playing them during the indicated time and you have the prayer points to pay their costs, if any. After played and resolved, they're then placed in a discard pile, and if the draw pile is ever depleted, then just shuffle the discard pile to create a new deck of divine intervention cards to draw from. These 2 spaces are for the final action we have yet to talk about, movement, which can also lead to battles. When you take this action, you select 1 troop to move a single space. Now that said, certain power tiles, cards, and other effects may increase your total movement when taking this action. And when moving a troop, you don't have to take all of the units with you. You could split them up and instead only take some of them out of the space during the movement. And if you have multiple spaces of movement to take, you're allowed to gather troops up along the way and bring them with you to your final destination. Just make sure you aren't taking more than 5 total units with you. Now when you move, you can either travel by land, marching from one adjacent space to the next, as you just saw, or you can move one space to go from one piece of land to another, separated by the Nile, as long as they are connected by these arrows. These represent harbors that you are crossing. Now if you look closely, you can see these 2 islands are in fact connected by arrows, so we can move back and forth between them. But there's no arrows connecting either of these islands to the mainland. So how did this troop get here in the first place? Well, that brings us to the final mode of transportation, which is using a pyramid's power to teleport your troops from it to any space containing an obelisk. To do this, you need to be in a city space with one of your pyramids. So for example, this troop here is in a space that doesn't have a pyramid, so it can't teleport, but either of these could. Then you spend 2 prayer points and move as many units from that space with a pyramid as you'd like to any space with an obelisk. So I'll move this troop right to here. Teleporting like this has to be done as a part of movement, but it doesn't use up a movement point. So I could still move a single space as normal if I wanted by moving these guys into this space here. Now let's go back to cities for a moment, because I want to point out that each city is surrounded by very thick walls, and this means that your opponent cannot move into your city unless they start their movement action directly adjacent to that city. So in this case, this troop here, if it had 2 movement points, it could not go here and then directly into the city. First, it would have to stop here, and then on its next movement action, it can move from this adjacent space into any one of the 3 city spaces. You can, of course, enter and exit your own city spaces without penalty, and anytime you enter a space with an opponent's figures, a battle ensues and your movement ends. So now let's go over the steps for carrying out a battle. First, each player involved in the battle will take their battle cards and secretly pick 2 of them. One which they will discard right away. The other one they'll be playing into the battle. But first, they may add any number of Divine Intervention cards they want into this fight, as long as the Divine Intervention card has the combat symbol on it. These are supposed to be played secretly into the battle, so you just place them underneath of the battle card, which is larger, and then place them both face down on the board. Once all the cards have been placed, both players will reveal the cards, and then we resolve the combat. Now, I find it's a little tricky to pick my Divine Intervention cards and my battle cards without giving my opponent some clue as to what I'm doing. So what I tend to do is take all of my battle cards into my lap under the table, and then pick which ones I'm going to be playing. And when we're both ready, we just both bring them up on the table and drop them right away at the same time. But let's look at how you resolve the effects of these cards. The player who took the action that moved their troop into a space with an opponent's troop is the attacker. So I'm the attacker in this case, and my opponent, the red player, is the defender. Now into this fight I played 2 cards, my battle card and a Divine Intervention card. That cost 1 prayer point, so I have to make sure I pay that. My opponent played a battle card, and they also had a power tile that could affect the combat. And we'll see in a moment if it does. But first, we each need to total our battle strength. And you start by adding up the number of units you have in the battle. I have 2. Then you add on any values associated with this symbol, an upraised hand holding a sword. So I have 2 and 3 here for a grand total of 7 points of strength. My opponent has 3 units, a 2 on their battle card, and then this power tile says that when they are the defender in a battle, they receive an additional point of strength. So my opponent has a total strength of 6, which loses compared to my strength of 7. In the case of a tie, the winner is the defender. But now we need to assign damage. And this has nothing to do with your strength values. Instead, you look for the damage symbol here, the red drop, and for every point of damage, you remove a unit from your opponent's troop. So the red player will damage both of my units, unless you have protection, and that's this symbol here. So I can subtract 1 from my opponent's damage, which means I'll only lose 1 troop, and this goes back to my reserve off of the board. I don't have any damage values, so my opponent's troop stays intact even though he lost. This guy is just really fierce. So regardless of the winner in terms of strength, it's possible that both players will do damage to one another, and the loser may in fact do more damage than the winner. It's even possible that the loser will do enough damage to remove all of the winner's troops from the battlefield. If the attacker wins the battle and has at least one unit left in the fight, which I do here, they gain a permanent battle victory point. The defender gains no victory points even if they win the battle. When, like the red player, you've been defeated in a fight and your opponent has at least one unit remaining, like I do here, you have two choices. The red player could retreat, in which case I get to choose an adjacent empty space to move my opponent's troops to. So I could put them here, or I could put them here. Alternatively, they may recall their troops. And if there's no empty adjacent spaces to move to, they will have to recall their troops. Recalling troops means you take all of the units off the board, put them back in your reserve, and increase your prayer points by 1 for each unit that you removed. The winner of the battle may then choose to also recall all of their units from that troop in order to gain prayer points. So I could take this one off the board and claim a single prayer point. After the battle is resolved, all cards played into it are discarded, and it's very important at the beginning of the game to decide whether you want to discard all battle cards face up or face down. The game lets you choose, and this can have quite an impact on the strategies in play because all players start the game with the exact same battle cards. And remember, when you start a battle, you first discard one card right away, and then the card you played will be discarded as well. So if they're all being played face down, I get to see half of the cards you play, but the other half I'm not sure about. So I can start to play the odds about what cards you might have remaining after I've seen you engaged in a couple of different battles. So what this means, since you start with 6 battle cards, is after the third battle that you're involved in, all of your battle cards should be discarded, which means you'll then be able to collect all of them back up and start fresh again. If you end your movement in a temple space, then you get to collect the temple victory point token that is there. If you should later leave the temple, then you will need to return that temporary victory point token. If you're there and an opponent enters the temple and attacks you, and you're forced to leave for that reason, then you'll need to pass that temporary victory point token over to that opponent. If you end your movement in an opponent's city where they have a pyramid, they lose all the benefits of that pyramid and you gain them. So this means since I've gone into the red player's city and I'm beside their white pyramid, which is at level 4, the red player must now give me the temporary pyramid victory point that they had previously collected. If I should leave this city space, I'll have to give it back. But while I'm here, I can now also purchase level 4 white power tiles, and my opponent can no longer purchase any white power tiles because they don't have a white pyramid at all, because I have control of this pyramid. But don't forget, my opponent could move a troop into this space and fight me out of there, or even recruit troops directly into this space to force a battle to happen immediately and try to drive me out that way. Now I'd like to go back to the power tiles and explain a couple of them to you. Not all of them, because the game comes with this booklet that defines all of the Divine Intervention cards as well as all of the power tiles. And this is available to download online as well. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video, and once you look these over, I think you'll agree that they're all pretty straightforward. For example, this power tile simply means that each night phase you may draw an additional Divine Intervention card, where this power tile allows you to collect the associated permanent victory point. This power tile awards you with this additional gray action token. And when playing your regular action tokens, you may then choose to also assign this action token to a separate empty action space, basically giving you 2 actions in one turn. There are multiple copies of these 2 power tiles, but remember, each player may only own one of each of them. This power tile is a little bit different. It allows you to collect this golden additional action token. This one also allows you to place this additional action token after playing one of your regular action tokens, but it must go into one of these 2 spaces of your pyramid. When purchasing either of these 2 power tiles, you may then immediately take back any of your discarded battle cards. You then choose one of them to remove from the game and replace it with the card that goes with the tile that you purchased. When you purchase any of these 7 power tiles, you also gain the associated creature that's pictured on them. The tiles themselves will often give you specific bonuses like regular power tiles. This one even awards you with a free permanent victory point. But the creatures themselves also can aid your troops on the board. After a creature is purchased, it should be immediately placed on one of your city spaces that contain troops. If you have more than one space with troops, you can choose which one it will go with. If there are no troops in any of your city spaces, then instead the creature will wait on your power card until some have been recruited and then immediately join them. You may own more than one creature, but each troop may only have one creature associated with it. Also, a creature doesn't count against your 4-unit limit for a troop. You also don't count your creature when totaling the number of your units for their combat strength. Instead, many of the creatures themselves bring their own combat strength as indicated on their power tile. For example, the ancestral elephant will add +1 to the troop's attack strength, +1 to its protection, and +1 to its movement when you move this troop. Creatures can never be destroyed, so even if you lose all of the units in its troop, just return the creature back to one of your city spaces that contains a troop. Again, if there aren't any, then just return the creature back to its power tile. And the next time there are troops in your city, immediately put the creature with a troop. Alright, so once every player's action tokens have been placed and resolved, it's now time to collect victory and bonus prayer points. Players with troops on temples like these immediately collect the number of prayer points that are shown on the board. This is a special temple, and it says that you may remove one of your units in order to collect the prayer points shown here. There's quite a few, 5. The Sanctuary of All Gods gives you the option to remove 2 of your units from the board in order to collect a permanent victory point. And finally, each player that controls at least 2 temples will receive this permanent bonus victory point. And those bonus prayer points and victory points are awarded at the end of every day phase. So even if you held on to the same 2 temples and already received a victory point for that in the previous round, if you hold on to them for another round, you'll get another bonus victory point. Now, at the end of the day phase, when all of those victory points have been assigned, if any player has 8 or more victory points, they are the winner. If more than one player has 8 or more victory points, then the player who has the most victory points breaks that tie and is the winner. Now, if more than one player has the same number of victory points, then we'll need to see which one of those players received the most battle victory points. And remember, you will receive one of these every time you are the attacker in a battle and win with at least 1 unit remaining from that troop. If there is still a tie, then it is broken by the player who went earliest in the turn order that round. If no one has 8 or more victory points at the end of the day phase, then everyone collects their action tokens and you start a new round with a new night phase. Well, that's everything you need to know to play Kemet. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. We're also going to be holding a contest to give away a free copy of Kemet that was provided to us by Asmodee, so I want to thank them for that. And Jen Ikuta, the lady who custom painted these creatures, has custom painted a second set that we're going to give away with that free copy of Kemet. The details for the contest, as well as Jen's contact information in case you'd like to contact her to perhaps paint some miniatures for this game or another game for you, will be in the description of this video. I do hope you'll subscribe to her channel and continue to tune in because we're going to be doing a full playthrough of Kemet where you'll have an opportunity to help influence the gameplay decisions and really see how this game works. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.